In the winter of 1959, 9 skilled hikers from the Ural Polytechnic Institute set out to conquer the icy slopes of the Ural Mountains in Russia. Their leader, Igor Dyatlov, was a seasoned adventurer, confident in his team's ability to endure the brutal cold. The group laughed, sang, and took photographs as they trekked deeper into the wilderness, unaware they were walking into a nightmare that would haunt history forever. Days later, when they failed to return, search teams were dispatched. What rescuers found defied logic. The hikers' tent had been ripped open from the inside, as if they had fled something unseen. Their belongings were still neatly arranged, but outside, chaos reigned. Some bodies were barefoot in the snow. Others had fractured skulls and broken ribs, wounds no human hand could explain. One woman's eyes were missing, another's tongue was gone. The temperature that night had dropped below 30 degrees Celsius, yet the hikers had run half naked into the storm. Why? What terror could drive 9 rational people to destroy their shelter and flee into freezing darkness? For decades, theories have swirled. Military experiments, secret weapons, UFOs, or something ancient lurking in the mountains. The truth remains buried beneath layers of snow and silence. This is the story of the Dyatlov Pass incident, where nature, fear, and the unknown collided, leaving behind a trail of horror that refuses to fade. The Dyatlov group began their journey on January 25, 1959. They were a collection of bright, determined students, all young, healthy, and passionate about the thrill of adventure. Their leader, Igor Dyatlov, was admired for his precision and leadership. Alongside him were 8 others: Zina Kolmogorova, Rustem Slobodin, Lyudmila Dubinina, Yuri Doroshenko, Yuri Krivonishenko, Alexander Kolovatov, Nikolai Thibault Brignol, Semyon Zolotaryov, and Yuri Yudin. They departed from Sverdlovsk by train, bound for the remote reaches of the Ural Mountains. Their destination, Otorten Mountain, a desolate peak whose name in the local Mansi language ominously means, "Don't go there." Despite the dark warning, they pressed forward with smiles, laughter, and youthful confidence. Yuri Yudin, the 10th member, fell ill early in the expedition and turned back. His decision would save his life. Before leaving, he jokingly told the others to bring him a souvenir from the top of the mountain. None of them could have imagined he'd never see them again. As they ascended deeper into the wilderness, the group documented everything: handwritten diaries, cheerful songs around a campfire, photographs showing pure joy and strength. But as the days passed, the weather began to turn. Snow thickened. Winds screamed through the trees. Temperatures plummeted below freezing. On February 1st, they reached Kholat-Syakhl, the Mountain of the Dead. Instead of descending into the forest for shelter, Dyatlov decided to camp on an exposed slope. Some believed he did this to test the group's endurance. Others think he didn't want to lose progress. Whatever the reason, it would become the most fateful decision of his life. As night fell, the wind howled like a living creature. The tent was secured against the slope, their final meal eaten in quiet exhaustion. Inside, the hikers scribbled their last diary entries, words filled with humor, optimism, and warmth. None of them could have known that just hours later, that same tent would be torn apart from the inside. No footprints of attackers, no signs of struggle, only the snow and silence. What exactly happened between that peaceful night and the discovery weeks later remains one of the most chilling mysteries in human history. But the descent into madness had already begun, and the Ural winds carried whispers of something ancient that watched from the dark. The night of February 1st was unlike any other. The wind roared across the barren slope, clawing at the hikers' tent as though the mountain itself wanted to swallow them whole. Inside, the Dyatlov group huddled close, their bodies wrapped in thick blankets, their breath forming small clouds in the freezing air. They spoke little that night. The storm outside had grown fierce, a merciless howl echoing across the endless snowfields. They had built their camp carefully, skis beneath the tent for insulation, their gear stacked neatly in corners. Their diary entries from that day reflected calm efficiency. Yet something in the tone of their words hinted at unease. "It's hard to imagine such a wind," One of them wrote, "It screams, and the mountain answers." At some point during that night, something changed. No one would ever know what triggered it, but something made them tear open the tent from the inside and run into the snow without shoes, coats, or flashlights. Investigators later found that the cuts were made from within, as if the hikers were desperately trying to escape. But from what? The search team that discovered the tent weeks later noted that everything inside was in order. Boots, jackets, cameras, and food left untouched. Even Dyatlov's notebook lay open beside a lantern. It was as if they had fled mid-sentence. Outside, footprints told a chilling story. Bare feet and socked feet moved away from the tent in a single direction, calmly at first, not like people running in panic, but walking with purpose. The tracks led into the dense forest, where temperatures dropped to nearly 30 degrees Celsius. Theories vary wildly. Some say they heard an explosion. Others claim an unnatural light filled the sky that night. Witnesses from a nearby village reported strange orange orbs moving above the mountains. The Mansi people who lived in the region later told rescuers that the mountain was cursed, that ancient spirits punished those who disturbed it. By dawn, the hikers were scattered across the slope and forest below, frozen in time. But before, death claimed them. Something far more terrifying must have happened. Something that forced 9 rational minds to abandon safety and run barefoot into the heart of a blizzard. To this day, the question remains, what did they see? The mountain kept its secret buried under layers of snow and silence, and when rescuers first stepped onto that icy slope, the air itself seemed to hold a presence, as though something unseen was still there, watching. Weeks passed before anyone realized the Dyatlov group wasn't coming back. The families grew restless, writing letters to the university and local authorities. When February turned to late winter and no message arrived, a full-scale search was launched. On February 26, 1959, a team of rescuers, students, teachers, and military volunteers trekked into the icy wilderness. They followed the group's planned route, retracing every step until one bitterly cold morning. They found it, the tent. What they saw chilled them to the core. The tent was half buried in snow, its fabric slashed open from the inside. Poles were broken, and one side of the tent had collapsed under the weight of snow. Yet the belongings inside were untouched. Boots, coats, food, diaries, and cameras. Everything was still in place, as though the hikers had vanished in mid-conversation. Footprints in the snow led away from the campsite, barefoot in socks, some wearing only one shoe. The prints descended toward a dark line of trees nearly a mile away. There were no signs of struggle, no blood, no evidence of an avalanche. It was as though 9 people had calmly walked into certain death. The rescuers followed the trail into the forest. Beneath a large cedar tree, they found the first 2 bodies, Yuri Krivonishenko and Yuri Doroshenko. Both were barefoot, dressed only in their underclothes as if they had fled in panic. They had tried to build a small fire, their fingers burned, their faces twisted in frozen agony. Branches above were broken, suggesting one of them had tried to climb for safety, or perhaps to escape something below. As the rescuers pressed deeper, they discovered 3 more bodies, Dyatlov, Kolmogorova, and Slobodin. Scattered between the tree and the tent, they appeared to be crawling back toward camp, their faces buried in the snow, hands frozen in desperate motion. It was then that investigators realized something deeply wrong was at play. No avalanche could explain the cuts in the tent, the calm footprints, the missing clothing, or the broken bones. Something, or someone, had driven them from their shelter. Days turned into weeks before the last 4 bodies were found, buried under deep snow in a ravine, nearly 75 meters away. What the searchers uncovered there would only deepen the mystery. For now, the mountain remained silent, holding its breath as the men stood among the ruins of a tragedy that defied reason. But soon, the truth, or something close to it, would begin to surface, and it would terrify even the most rational minds among them. 2 months after the first bodies were found, melting snow revealed what the rescuers had been dreading: the remaining 4 members of the Dyatlov group. They were discovered in a ravine nearly 75 meters beyond the cedar tree, partially buried under several feet of snow. What investigators saw next turned a tragic mystery into a nightmare. Unlike the others, these 4 were better dressed. Some were wearing clothes that belonged to the first victims: torn jackets, mismatched gloves, and even pieces of fabric ripped from other hikers. It was clear they had survived longer and had scavenged whatever they could to fight the brutal cold. But the injuries they sustained were impossible to explain by any natural cause. Lyudmila Dubinina had broken ribs, her eyes were missing, and her tongue had been torn out. Zibo Brignol had massive skull fractures, as though struck by a tremendous force, yet his skin showed no external wounds. Zolotaryov and Kolovatov bore similar trauma: shattered ribs, internal bleeding, and crushed bones, injuries consistent with a high-speed car crash, not a mountain fall. There were no signs of an avalanche, no displaced snow, no broken trees. Rescuers were haunted by the scene. Some claimed the bodies looked almost posed, lying in unnatural positions, their faces frozen in expressions of terror. And then, there was the strangest detail of all: a faint orange tan on their skin, and radiation detected on their clothes. No one could explain it. When the investigators compiled their reports, they found yet more anomalies. The hikers' cameras, retrieved from the tent, contained their final photos: eerie images of strange glowing orbs in the sky. One frame showed what looked like bright streaks descending behind the trees. Could it have been flares, meteor activity, or something else entirely? Rumors began to spread. Soviet military testing, secret weapons, UFOs, or even a hidden government cover-up. Locals whispered that the Mansi spirits had taken revenge on intruders. Journalists were ordered not to write about it. Official reports quietly used vague language: the cause of death, an unknown compelling force. Families were told to accept the explanation, but the unease lingered. Even the rescuers spoke of the oppressive silence on the mountain, as if the very air resisted their presence. Some later confessed to feeling watched while recovering the bodies, hearing soft movements just beyond the tree line. Whatever happened that night, it wasn't simply a story of hikers lost to cold. It was something else, something that erased the line between the known and the impossible. And for the families waiting back home, the horror was only beginning. When the last of the Dyatlov group was finally laid to rest, the official investigation closed almost as quickly as it had begun. The Soviet authorities moved with chilling efficiency, classifying reports, confiscating photographs, and warning rescuers and witnesses not to discuss what they had seen. The official cause of death, as recorded, was a compelling natural force, vague, meaningless, and deliberately designed to end the conversation. But for the families and those who had walked that haunted mountain, the silence screamed louder than any storm. The families' desperation in Sverdlovsk. The relatives of the victims gathered in confusion and grief. Mothers demanded answers that never came. Igor Dyatlov's parents were told not to question the state's conclusion. Lyudmila Dubinina's father reportedly said, "They were all killed. But by what or by whom?" When the bodies were returned for burial, families were horrified by what they saw. Some corpses had darkened skin, almost bronze in color. Others bore deep bruises and injuries inconsistent with exposure. The authorities insisted that all bodies be buried quickly and under supervision. Open casket funerals were discouraged. Rumors began to spread through the city about radiation, about forbidden photos, about the state hiding something far more sinister. Then there was Yuri Yudin, the only surviving member, who had turned back early due to illness. He was shattered by survivors' guilt. When he was shown the recovered belongings, he reportedly said some of the items didn't belong to the group, like a pair of glasses and a piece of military-grade fabric. To his dying day, Yuri believed that the Soviet military had something to do with his friends' deaths. The investigators' fear. Even the lead investigator, Lev Ivanov, was never satisfied. In a private letter years later, he admitted he was pressured to close the case prematurely. He revealed that several of the bodies emitted low levels of radiation, and that a strange metallic residue was found on their clothes. Witnesses in nearby towns had reported seeing fireballs in the sky on the night of February 1st, glowing orbs moving silently over the horizon. Ivanov wrote, "I cannot shake the feeling that I was looking at something beyond human understanding." Shortly after those words became known, his reports disappeared from archives. He died before he could say more. Theories and shadows. Over the years, the Dyatlov Pass incident gave birth to hundreds of theories, each more disturbing than the last. Some believed the hikers had stumbled upon a secret weapons test, perhaps a parachute mine or experimental radiation device. The unusual injuries, the internal trauma without external damage, and the glowing orange skin all seemed to suggest exposure to something explosive or radioactive. But no debris, no blast marks, and no official record of testing ever surfaced. Others spoke of a KGB conspiracy, that one or more hikers were unknowingly carrying classified material, and the group was eliminated to cover it up. Yet their university backgrounds and diaries showed nothing political, nothing espionage-related. Then came the supernatural explanations. The Mansi people who lived near the mountains spoke in hushed tones about the Menk, an ancient spirit, a mountain demon that guards the land. According to legend, the Menk appears as a massive, shadowy creature in the snow, punishing those who trespass. Some modern hikers claim to have heard heavy two-legged footsteps in that region, even today. And then, there were the UFO theories. Those glowing orbs captured in the hikers' last photographs could not be ignored. Military documents released decades later confirmed that strange luminous phenomena were indeed observed over the Urals that winter. Were they rockets? Energy weapons? Something extraterrestrial? No one could say for sure. The survivor's curse. In the years that followed, many who had been part of the search or investigation met untimely deaths or suffered from chronic illness. One rescuer reportedly fell into a deep depression, claiming to see figures in the snow whenever he closed his eyes. Another died in a car crash just months after testifying about the case. Yuri Yudin lived to old age, but never escaped the nightmare. In interviews before his death, his voice trembled as he said, "If I had not turned back that day, I would be with them. But perhaps it was not meant for me to see what they saw." He paused, then added softly, "They did not die alone." The mountain remained silent. The place where the tragedy occurred was later named Dyatlov Pass, in honor of the group's leader. For decades, the government kept the case buried, literally and figuratively. Researchers, journalists, and filmmakers have tried to solve it, but every explanation falls short. Recent forensic studies claim an avalanche caused the injuries, yet no avalanche evidence exists at the site. No disturbed snow patterns, no debris, no matching trauma on all victims. Others suggest hypothermia-induced delirium made them flee, but this cannot explain the broken bones, radiation, or missing eyes and tongue. It's as though the mountain itself refuses to reveal the truth. Every winter, adventurers trek to that desolate slope, some to pay respect, others to feel the dread for themselves. Many describe an unshakable sense of being watched, a heaviness in the air, and strange mechanical hums echoing at night. Cameras malfunction and compasses spin erratically. The snow covers the evidence year after year, but sometimes just before sunset, when the cold wind howls through the trees, the silence feels alive, as though something is still there, frozen in time, waiting to be remembered. The Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of the greatest unsolved horrors in modern history, not merely a story of death, but of fear so profound it broke the boundaries of reason. Some mysteries are never meant to be solved, and perhaps that is why they endure.